Why Come Japan?
Welcome to another edition of Why Come Japan. I'm your host, Mr. Radrey, where I interview creatives here in Tokyo or outside of Tokyo or something about Japan. And today on my show is BUSANKEVIN, a.k.a. JustJapan podcast, a.k.a. Mad for Maple.
A lot of names.
Yeah, the man with many names.
The man with many names. Well, hey, Radrey, thank you for asking me to come on Why Come Japan.
Oh, thank you. I mean, this is probably the first time we've actually talked face-to-face.
True. Face-to-face via computer, via the internet. No, yeah, true, it is, I suppose. So, I mean, we've been, yeah, I guess when it comes to YouTube, I would regard you as a contemporary back in the old school days of YouTubing.
Yeah.
Japan YouTubing, and we were, doing stuff at around the same time. Yeah. So, hey guys, hey everyone out there listening. Hi.
Yeah. Right. So wait a minute. Do you still operate the BUSANKEVIN YouTube channel?
I put up a video yesterday. Actually,
you put up a video yesterday. Okay. Yeah, I think I saw it
But mind you, that has been a long time. Yes, it's still there. The BUSANKEVIN YouTube channel is still there. Tons of stuff. From time to time, videos do appear. They're not edited. There's no production value. They tend to be me flipping on the iPhone and just kind of like putting in the internal camera and filming for a couple of minutes and talking, and then directly uploading from my phone.
Okay. So yes, I don't think I've seen one of your videos in a long time.
Then you would not have seen one of my videos in a long time. I think when I first moved to Beijing, China, last year, I made not a regular series of videos, but I did make maybe a dozen videos called Life in Beijing. Mm-hmm. Just showing family, friends, and folks, what life was like here. But I didn't make a lot. No, not like I didn't have the kind of the wealth of content that I was putting out when I lived in Japan.
Oh, I see. All right. So right now you started the Just Japan podcast, or when did you start that?
Oh gosh, here's a good question. When did I start that? I started the Just Japan podcast. See, now I'm on the spot. I was going to check this out before I got on the interview with you. I was like, you know what, Kevin, you should.
Because usually with this show, the best thing I always do when it comes to interviews is always start with some kind of a timeline.
So let's see. When did I do this? When did this all happen? When did this debacle called the Just Japan podcast first begin? It began back in, oh my God, really that long ago? It looks like maybe 2014, 2015, I believe, 2015, 14, something like that. Long time ago.
Was that when podcasting was really starting to become a thing? Because I remember podcasting's been around forever, but it only recently got its legs, it seems like.
Yeah, well, I mean, okay, now actually, gosh, I didn't realize. Yeah, 2013. 2013.
It's 2013, not 2015.
No, 2013, because I'm looking right now. I just popped onto a page, and I see October 2015, episode 85. So, I started back in 2013, and I guess podcasting was something I was really interested in, because at the time, I was commuting to work every day in Japan. I was a runner, so I was spending a lot of time kind of by myself, and I caught on to podcasts, I guess, probably back in 2008. I started really getting into podcasts myself as a consumer. And I guess, I just decided to create a show that I wanted to listen to. I was a fan of long form podcasts. I enjoyed listening to shows where, if I was going to go out for a 1 hour run or I had an hour and a half on the train, I could kind of really get into an interview or really get into finding out about something, a topic or a person. So, I guess that was a goal. And also, I guess kind of like with your shows, you've got a lot of variety with the guests. I've been trying to get a lot of variety as well. Yeah. I mean, so when I was listening to podcasts, say, 2008, 2009, 10, in Japan, my first years in Japan, I was trying to find Japan content, and I would find that podcasts would pop up. They'd be there for 6 months and they'd disappear. And they tended to be some English teachers who would, make a podcast about teaching English. And I found that was a lot of inside baseball. Maybe it was some people who worked for the JET program, and it was very JET centric podcast. and I had never been a Jet, and I hadn't been an ALT, and they would be talking about all this like stuff, and I'm like, okay, I'd listen to a few episodes and I'd give up and move on. So I suppose that I was kind of wanted to create the kind of content that I craved, and I knew that a lot of other people out there who liked Japan or were into Japan wanted to hear. So that's when things began.
Okay, so it was mostly just like something you like, because you used to make a bunch of videos where it's just you flipping out a camera and you would tell like some story about your life in Japan or something and how it evolved. And so basically podcasting was a way to kind of share your story without having the visual.
Well, yeah, I mean, well, I mean, I suppose share my story, but more than anything, share other people's stories, because I mean, you know, I started my BUSANKEVIN channel back in 2006, I think. Yeah, when I lived in Busan, Korea.
Right.
I made the unfortunate mistake of like adding a geographic name to the channel. And then
it's still stuck with you. I mean, I still remember the BUSANKEVIN handle.
I guess so, BUSANKEVIN. But I mean, I left Busan like probably 5 months after I started doing YouTube. Yeah. So I mean, when I first got to Japan, you know, it was 2000, and I got there early 2008. Actually, like around this time, February. I got there in like mid-February 2008. Not mid-February. What am I thinking? March, April-ish, right before Golden Week. And you know, at that time there wasn't a lot of Japan content.
Yeah, right. Now there's like gobs of it everywhere.
Exactly, and there's a lot of like really polished stuff. But back in those days, I mean, you know, there weren't very many people doing it, so it was really easy to make, I'll use air quotes, wow videos, because there weren't many videos at their period. So any kind of content that you put up, people like back in America or Canada, like the kind of Japanophiles were just like, wow, give us more.
Yeah, no, I totally get that.
So I think like with the podcast, and I thought to myself, if I just have a format where it's just me talking and telling stories, it's going to run out real quick, because you know my existence in Japan is was a kind of a mundane one, I suppose. You know, just a regular guy. You know, I wake up in the morning, I go to work, I work all day, I come home. Maybe I see a shrine from the train on the way home.
Yeah.
Sometimes I go for a walk at night and I see some interesting things. But at the end of the day, you know, my own experiences wouldn't really last that long on a podcast. So I decided to have a format where I would just interview different people doing different things every week.
Okay. So kind of like this show.
Exactly. Okay. And that's why I called it Just Japan Podcast, because it really could be anything. It could be like teaching. It could be stuff about businesses, arts, creative stuff. It could be about history, culture, like anything.
And you love talking about Japan. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, I love Japan.
Have you ever made an episode that wasn't about Japan, even though the show's called Just Japan?
No, that's actually why I created a second podcast.
I've got one for teachers. What's it called?
Yeah, it's an education podcast. I've got one called the Making Better Teachers podcast.
That's it, Making Better Teachers.
Remember
the name. All right.
Yeah. So that's actually like an education professional development podcast. So it's very, very kind of professional oriented. Like very kind of focused on like what I do as a career. And I'm interviewing teachers who are just really talking about kind of nuts and bolts teacher stuff. So a very different market.
Okay. But I thought about like, because sometimes I've had guests in here like where I just like crowbar in the whole Japan angle every now and then, because I just want to talk to them. But
nice. No, I think all the guests that I had on my show were always very, and have been very Japan centric.
Okay, so it's mostly just about interviews and recording those interviews. I see.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So give me a little bit of a timeline here. I'm kind of trying to picture you. So you're originally from Toronto? Is that right?
Not at all.
No?
You know, that is a city in Canada for sure.
Oh, near Toronto.
Not at all.
No? Okay.
Well, I mean, I guess, okay.
I know you're from Canada. That's about as much as I know.
I'm from Canada. I'm from the east coast of Canada. I'm from the province of Nova Scotia.
Nova Scotia, okay.
And I'm from a little fishing village there. And I grew up there, but when I travel back to Canada now, My family are originally from Ontario, so where Toronto is. So when I do travel back to Canada on holidays with my family, we do kind of go east of Toronto and visit my family in Ontario. So that's where I'm originally from. Yeah.
Okay. Do you ever feel like when you go back to your hometown, does it ever feel like a foreign country to you?
Oh gosh, yeah.
Definitely feels that way for me. Like when I go back to my hometown, every time, like, man, everything looks strange. Like, why does everything look so weird?
Well, actually, I haven't been to my hometown in, I want to say 15 years, because my parents don't live in my hometown anymore. My parents weren't originally from there. My parents were, they worked for the Canadian government, and they'd been transferred there for their jobs, and I was born there and stuff. So when they retired, they moved back to their hometown, which is, several thousand kilometers away. But definitely, whenever I go back to Canada, it's weird.
I see.
I've been living abroad since 2002.
Wow. Yeah. So was the initial like appeal to coming to Asia, was it all about teaching or initially?
With the Just Japan podcast?
Not just to Just Japan, the podcast. I mean, before like the early days of Busan Kevin. Before there was Busan Kevin. I wouldn't
say that. No, I think from time to time I had videos about teaching, but I know for sure like the school I worked at, I pretty much worked at one school the entire time I was in Japan, like a private international school. And they always...
Yeah, well, no, I mean, my question is that what was the appeal that brought you to Asia in the first place? Because I know you first came to...
Okay, gotcha.
I know you first went to Korea first,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. Well, okay, so I guess wanderlust, essentially. I grew up in small town Canada, very Inaka, so to speak. I grew up in a little village of probably less than 1,000 people, and always, very outdoorsy life. And I always dreamed of going to Europe, and I always dreamed of backpacking Europe. And when I got to university, I was in a situation where I had to work like 3 part-time jobs all the way through. I had to work summers and all that to kind of like, just pay for tuition and stuff. And, when I was in school, I had friends who were, I guess, a bit more financially secure than I was. And they had the luxury of being able to get a working holiday visa for the summer and go backpacking around Ireland and the UK and work in pubs for the summer and all that stuff. And I was always painfully jealous because I didn't get to do any of that. I didn't get to see the world. So I went to university, graduated with my BA. This is during the internet bubble, the original bubble.
Oh, right.
Right. So, couldn't get a job with a BA in Canada. So I went to technical college for 2 years and I studied electronic game design, and I graduated, and my kind of not major, my focus was 3D graphics. So I had my diploma in electronic game design. I was a 3D Studio Max modeler and had a pretty good demo reel, pretty good portfolio. So I started working in the game development industry.
Wow. Okay. I did not know this. All right. This is new to me.
So I worked in the game dev industry for a few years in Eastern Canada. I worked at a small company that no longer exists. It was like a third-party publisher. We used to make like, if you went to like Best Buy or Walmart, and they'd be like this like bin with like CDs, or it was like 50 top gambling games or 50 top shooter games, and it was all like these little side scrollers and stuff. Like our company did that.
It's like one of those like where they had them on CD-ROMs and everything. Is that what you're talking about?
Exactly. And there were games that were geared towards the casual gamer, not actual gamers.
Did you make any edutainment games?
I never did make edutainment games.
Okay.
Yeah, just like little spaceships blowing stuff up and things like that. But after a couple of years of doing that, I just got the wanderlust. And one night, one of my roommates went out to a party. He came home drunk, and I remember like sitting at home. And I'm like, so what was going on? Where were you? He was like, oh, it's at a goodbye party for a friend of mine. He's going to Korea. I'm like, oh yeah, what's he doing in Korea? Oh, he's going to be teaching English. Really? I was just like, tell me more about this, my drunk friend. And he was like, tell me a bit about his buddy. I'm like, how did he get this job? And he's like, I don't know. I'm like, can you put me in contact with your friend? And he, gave me his friend's email address, and I emailed his buddy. A few days later, he got back to me, told me a little bit about teaching English in Korea. And he put me in contact with a recruiter. And it was like 6 weeks later, I was in Korea.
Nice. Well,
I just dropped everything. I was just like, I remember like the day I went in, I resigned from my job, and
just like, I'm done with this video game stuff. I want to do Korea.
yeah, I want to go teach English. And I just remember the owner of the company. It was a small company, so I was with the owner, and he was just about to cut my head off because he thought I was going to try to. He was expecting me to say I'm moving to this, like, there was a rival company that was like headhunting a lot of our staff. So he was like ready to pounce on me. And I'm like, no, I'm going to go to Korea to be an English teacher. And he was just like, what? And I just remember he was just like, man, you got cojones. He was like, you're giving up this job to go be an English teacher? I'm like, yep.
Wow.
And off I went. And that was back in early 2002. The initial plan was to go for 1 year, travel a bit, and then go back to working in the game development industry. And that was 17 years ago.
So what happened since then? I mean, eventually you made the move to Japan and you met your wife.
Well, yeah. Well, actually, I met my wife. I met my wife before I went to Japan. Actually, I met my Japanese wife in Korea.
Was this during the first year or second year? Or?
It was my 4th year. So I was there for 5 years, and I was in
so
Seoul.
you must have really liked Korea. All right.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun. I just had it was great. It was a party. I was young and I'd never traveled, and I had all this disposable income, and I didn't have a lot of responsibility. I traveled around. I went to China, Vietnam.
Good.
Yeah, life was great. Yeah. And right around year 3, I decided that, hey, I really like this teaching thing. I think I want to give this a go. So I set my eyes on the prize, and I decided I was going to go back to university in Canada and get my teaching certification. So basically one more degree, a teaching degree, a Bachelor of Education. So I started saving for that. And during that time, I'd moved to Busan from Seoul. And I met my wife, who was teaching Japanese there at a language school.
Okay.
And so we hooked up. Then I went back to school in Canada for a year, got my teaching degree. It was just a 1-year program I went into. And my wife came to Canada with me. And then 2008, hopped over to Japan.
So wait a minute, you got a teaching degree in Canada?
Yeah.
Okay. Did that help a lot? Was that really essential for what you did?
Oh, for what I do, absolutely. Yeah. You can't do what I do without a teaching degree.
What do you do that you can't do that teaching degree, if you don't mind me asking, unless it's like a secret?
Well, no, it's not a secret. It's just, essentially, I'm a grade 1 teacher. I've been a kindergarten teacher, a pre-K teacher, I've taught grade 2, but I work, I do the exact same job that a grade 1 teacher in Canada or America would do. So for example, I'm working at an international school. In the case of the school I work at, it's, it's using Canadian curriculum and the International Baccalaureate World Curriculum. The kids I teach are, kids whose parents work for foreign companies. They work for big national conglomerates. They work at embassies, and they want their, when they're transferred to a country like China, or in the case of Japan, they want their kids are going to, maybe they're being taken out of school in America. They're going to be in this foreign country for 3 years. So they want to have that same style of education. So in order to work at a school like I work at, you have to have a teaching degree, you have to have a certification, you have to have, all the same things that a teacher in America or Canada would have.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. So, and I'm I have to have my teaching license from a professional body in Canada. So, I've got my Bachelor of Education from the University of Ottawa. I've got my teaching license. You have to have your license and all that stuff in order to get the visa.
Okay.
So yeah, so it's a bit of a different beast than when I was teaching in Korea. I was a language teacher. So it's the same. I called them hagwons. So like an eikaiwa.
All right.
So my Bachelor of Arts was sufficient enough for me to get that kind of job. But doing what I do now, so I had to have my teacher training. And, when I was in Canada, getting that degree, I also had to be a student teacher. And, I spent, months teaching as a student teacher in Canadian schools and all that stuff. So, for example, I'm teaching right now, my school's in the embassy district in Beijing. So we've got a lot of embassy kids at my school. We call them embassy kids. So their parents are diplomats.
Oh, is that any different from teaching normal kids?
They're probably the most balanced kids I teach.
Oh, really?
They are very normal kids, actually, because I teach also a lot of super duper rich kids, who are very privileged. But I think like the kids whose parents are diplomats in their home countries, they're civil servants, right? They work for the government, so they're not rich by any means. They're they work for the equivalent of the State Department, and then they're transferred abroad for a few years, and then they'll move back home for a few years, and then they'll go to another country. So they're definitely not rich kids. They're quite worldly. It's pretty impressive, actually.
Right. I remember hearing about this on your podcast that you called them third world kids, not third world kids. Jesus Christ. Fuck.
You're thinking third culture.
Third culture. Thank you. God damn it. It's not something that's not a good prefix.
Yeah. You'll meet these kids who are like, very, they're like, hey, I'm so-and-so, I'm from America. And they're like, but actually I've never lived in America. These are kids who are like, say in grade 5. They're like, my mom, dad from America. I was born in Hong Kong, and then I moved to like Tanzania for a few years. And then I was in Germany, and now I'm here in China. You're just like, wow, that's really off the hook, man. And they've got some pretty neat stories, really interesting perspectives on life that I certainly did not have as a little country bumpkin from Canada.
Okay, so we have a few questions from the chat, mostly just from Simon Nochanama, if you know who that is.
Oh, yes.
Three old dudes.
Of course.
Or maybe you've been on the show, I'm not sure. The question he's asking is, can your kids speak Mandarin? Can they now speak Mandarin, I guess?
No, they can't. They at our school, all kids, and I'm pausing for a moment here. I'm listening because I've got a sick child in the next room and I hear her. Oh, well.
Yeah, Kevin had to postpone this interview because of family needs.
Yeah.
If anybody was paying attention to the schedule that I post all the time. But
yeah, sorry about that.
No, it's okay. I mean,
kids got the flu.
That's a legit excuse. So.
Yeah, sure enough. So gosh, what was that? I'm having a complete
brain.
About
Mandarin.
My kids do take Mandarin every day. They've got one period of Mandarin, like a 40-minute period of Mandarin each and every day.
Okay.
And
but they're not fluent.
No. I think it's pretty basic. Like both of my kids are in the, they have, I think there's like 6 levels in each grade. So both of my kids are like pretty basic. Yeah, quite basic. But they're fluent in English and Japanese.
Oh, that's what you want, right?
Yeah, that's the main thing.
Yeah,
fluent in the languages of their parents. Yeah,
that's ideal. I want to go back to your timeline a bit here. So you went to Korea. You stayed there for 5 years, and then you went back to Canada to get your teaching license for a good couple of years, and then you made the trip back to Japan. Yeah, and then eventually you're in Kobe for quite some time.
The whole time. The
entire time. Okay.
The entire time. I lived in the same apartment in the same neighborhood from the day I moved there until the day we left. So quite attached to Kobe. Yeah. So we were there for almost 10 years. Yeah.
You missed the Kobe beef?
Oh yeah, because that's how I rolled, man. I used to eat that stuff daily.
Yeah. Hey, I mean, it's world famous, right?
Yeah.
Wait, no, did you actually really eat Kobe beef when you were there, or never?
A couple of times. Like
I've never actually had it. What's the verdict? What do you think?
I think there's a lot of different grades of it you can get. I think I on my website, JustJapan stuff, I made a post about where you can get cheap Kobe beef. Okay. And there are places, if you go to Chinatown, there's different like very tourist drop places where you can get pretty cheap stuff. But I mean, it varies. You can get a Kobe steak for like $40, right up to like $200, $300, $400.
Yeah, good to know.
So I've never had the really fancy stuff. I've had I won a couple of Kobe steaks one time at a Bonenkai, so a year-end party.
Okay, it was a weird place to win beef, but all right.
It was bingo. and I won. And like I didn't pick it up right there. It was like later, like about a week later, delivered to my house.
Okay.
That was pretty impressive. Uncooked. I remember my wife was scared to try to cook it. She was just like, I've never cooked anything like this before. She was like,
Right.
I'm so scared I'm going to ruin it. But she did a fantastic job.
Okay. So eventually, after your stint in Kobe was for how many years? It was
Almost
like
10.
almost 10. Wow.
Yeah.
And then eventually there was a call to action, or maybe not call to action. There was a job opportunity you got in Beijing from there. And that's where you are today.
It was just, I wanted to, it was time to kind of level up the career. And
Oh, okay.
it was time to bring it up a few notches. And basically the way it worked is where I was at, the school I was working at, I was in the international teaching world. There's two types of contracts. There's local hire and international hire contracts.
Okay.
So if you get a job at a school and you're on an international hire contract, you get it's essentially like a corporate package. So your school will pay for your rent. They supply you with an apartment. They take care of your rent. They pay you a salary. If you have children, they will have like free tuition at your school, and you will get free return air flights each summer holiday back home to your country of origin.
Okay.
It's pretty amazing. So that was something I didn't have, because I had worked at the school for a long time. And none of the teachers did. We just, we got a salary like anybody else, who has a regular job would have. But I would go to these, professional development workshops at different international schools around Japan, and I would meet all these teachers from around the world. And, we'd be talking over coffee and stuff in the day, or go for dinner at night and over drinks. And they were kind of telling me about like the work situations they had and these packages. And it was just like, oh my God, I don't have anything like that. And they're, if you're working in a country like China, you're going to be working tax free. Everything's just bank. So after some, difficult, hard conversations, my wife and I, part of us did not want to leave Japan.
Yeah, no, I know the feeling. Yeah.
But financially, we realized that there were opportunities out there. If we were just willing to just pack up and leave, we could, set ourselves up financially in a really good situation. And, I'm not getting any younger. I'm in my 40s now. So I am thinking of retirement and stuff like that. That's not that far away. And I do have kids, so I'm thinking about their future. So we decided to pack up and head to Beijing because, a really good school offered me, I applied around, and a really good school offered me a position. So, here we are.
How was it transitioning? Have you had any trouble, or was it pretty smooth? Or
no, I wouldn't say it was smooth. I mean, like in some ways, like our school really took care of us. So
that's good.
Yeah. So I mean, like the transition, the move here and stuff. But it's been hard. It's been hard for the kids. It's been tough for me too. I think like where we lived in Kobe. Kobe it's a beautiful little city. It's got all the amenities you could ever want, but it's also got all the nature you could ever want. And for those who know me, they know I love I'm into entomology. I love my bugs. I love birds. I love being outdoors. I love hiking, camping. And like that was all very accessible in Kobe. So like you had the big city, but you could just like go fishing very easily. You could go for a hike. There's the mountains behind the city. And I would just bop around the whole city on my bicycle. From my apartment to the mountains, it was like 20 minutes. But in Beijing, it's definitely not like that at all. It's incredibly dense. There's no nature around. The pollution is terrible, obviously, and we knew that. We weren't naive. We're like, oh, we never heard.
Oh, right. Well, that's what everybody always talks about with China. So
yeah, and it's not like that in all parts of China, but Beijing and everyone who's been here for a while is like, you should have been here a few years ago, Kevin. It was much worse. But it still sucks, So it's been. That's been tough. So, we're finishing up our second year. It's a 2-year contract, and we're moving on. We're leaving Beijing after. We're leaving Beijing in mid-June, actually. Yeah.
Are you looking forward to the move?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
kind of a change of pace in a way.
we're moving to Shenzhen, China, which is if anyone out there, you're familiar with a place called Hong Kong. It's
heard of it.
Hong Kong's the island. Shenzhen's on the mainland, right beside Hong Kong. So
It's really grown a lot in the last like 10 years.
Well, they say it's like the fastest growing city in the world. I mean,
really,
the city is only 40 years old. In 1979, it had like 16,000 people, and now it's got like 12 million.
Wow. Okay.
So, but it's right next to Hong Kong. Climate's really different. I know the air quality is a heck of a lot better than here.
Right.
I got a job at a really fantastic school. It's like a big level up in the career. So,
okay. Well, yeah, then definitely take it. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to be working at basically like a tier 1 flagship, like the Shenzhen's flagship international school. So
I see. So yeah. One thing I know about history is that supposedly China, or what is it? They have to give Hong Kong back to China, or China has to take in Hong Kong like in 2047. And China's working really hard to make sure that happens quicker. Or they're really getting ready for it, is what I've read.
Yeah, I don't know actually. I mean, this is going to be stuff I think it's going to be new to me when I move down there, because I've been living in my Beijing bubble. So I've never been to Hong Kong actually even. So we're really pumped to be able to just check it out, because I know there's like it's apparently just incredible. I mean the urban awesomeness, plus there's a lot of nature there too. There's a lot of incredible hike. Okay. Yeah, apparently there's like just incredible mountains and hiking and all kinds of fun critters and stuff crawling around in those mountains. And yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And my daughter's really looking forward to going to Hong Kong Disneyland.
Well, I've heard Hong Kong Disneyland's not that great. I've heard Tokyo Disneyland's better, but
yes, actually,
I guess it's better than nothing though.
Yeah. I mean, my 6-year-old daughter will be happy, I'm sure. I've heard that. I've heard from people who I've got one colleague here who I work with who's been to every Disneyland and Disney World there is, and she's like,
Euro Disney and all that.
Euro Disney, she's been to Anaheim, Orlando, I guess like Tokyo, Hong Kong, Shanghai, and she says she was saying that Tokyo Disneyland is definitely the best.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, that's what she said. For like, because she said it's like much more affordable than in America.
Okay, I guess that makes sense.
Disney World is way more expensive, so kind of I think like she was looking at that kind of balance.
Because everybody always says, "Don't go to Disneyland, go to Disney Sea." So, yeah, whatever. Okay, yeah, I still have never been there. I mean, I work like right next to Disneyland, and I've never been there.
I've never been either.
Okay, all right. So we're not missing anything, I don't think.
Yeah.
Or maybe we are. Who knows? I don't really care. Let me ask you something about so transitioning to like Chinese life. How has that been? I mean, like you have to like use VPNs all the time, and you have to
yeah.
And you have to like what else do you have to do? Like the food, Chinese food's very different than like what we're used to in like North America. You know? I mean, like you have like stuff like 1,000-year-old eggs and
well, these are things that I'm normally eating.
Just like to me, yeah, probably maybe it's just stuff you've gotten used to now, but it's just like whenever I go to China, because my girlfriend's Chinese, and whenever I go there, it's like everything always tastes different. Like the meat tastes different, It's just like it would take me some time to get used to.
Funny how that happens when you go to a different country, huh? The food tastes different. Yeah, no, it definitely is. I think, how could I put this? I mean, it's a bit riskier, I think, than say in Japan, just due to like if you're going to kind of like mom and pop shops or street vendors, maybe the kind of when you're coming from like a sanitary level, or you're looking at kind of like public health, whatnot, these kind of things, it can be a bit more risky. You need to be a risk taker, as they say in the education world when we talk to our kids. But I mean, for me, we don't eat out a lot. We actually don't eat a lot of Chinese food. And the reason why is my daughter has an anaphylactic peanut allergy.
Oh, well, yeah, you got to be careful of that.
So obviously, peanuts are a big part of Chinese cuisine. Peanut oil is a really big part of Chinese cuisine.
Yeah.
So you never really know what you're getting when you go to restaurants. And
Yikes.
we've unfortunately had some incidents where we've been in restaurants and we've asked and said, are there any peanuts used, peanut oil? And we've been told no, no, no. And then my daughter has eaten a little bit of something and then had a reaction.
Yikes.
So I mean, like we've got like 5 EpiPens in our house. You know, it's pretty full on with her. So unfortunately, that's kind of led us to living kind of a culinary sheltered life.
Do you miss like life in Japan where you could just pretty much eat anywhere?
Yes,
in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely, because it was just safe. I mean, like what we find here, like if we're going to go for like a day excursion, if we're going to go to like tourist spots and stuff, we actually have to pack food. So we have to pack food for my daughter. We have to make sure, like, we always pack onigiri. She loves that, some kombu onigiri and some different things like that, just in case. My wife and I, my son, we don't have allergies, but we got to be careful. We can't eat peanuts around here. We can't have peanuts in our house. We can't. So it's we're in the wrong country, basically.
Okay.
When you got someone who's got
I didn't know that there was so much peanuts there.
Oh yeah. Peanuts are a big thing, and I mean it's no biggie here because peanut allergies are not a thing. They basically don't exist here. Like even
really?
Like when we first got here and we only had 2 EpiPens and we had to use an EpiPen on my daughter after she had a reaction, like her first week here, and we were trying to get an EpiPen and we went to all these big international hospitals and like a lot of doctors, if they were Chinese doctors, they were like, "What's an EpiPen?
Oh God!
Why do you need that? What's that for?" And like just like legitimate ignorance, because it's not an issue. So we learned that when we go to Japan and Canada, we have to stock up.
Wait, so you can get EpiPens no problem in Japan. Okay, I've never needed one because I don't really have allergies. So.
In Japan, EpiPens are still a prescription-only thing, but like my daughter has like an allergist that we visit every year in Japan. If you're in Canada or America, you can buy them over the counter.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Or
yeah,
what I remember anyway. Who knows?
No, you definitely can. They had a shortage of EpiPens last year, actually.
Really?
Well, they're only made
Canada
in Canada and America. They're made by Pfizer, I think, and there was some kind of problem with the actual auto injector, the case. The company was like had some kind of mechanical issue, and they weren't able to produce as many as they needed, and blah blah blah. But that's hey, that's for the allergy podcast.
Right. Allergy podcast. Yeah.
But at the end of the day,
you got to segregate. Yeah, segregation is key.
I think the podcast, the transition was, I don't know. It's up and down. It was really interesting for me. One thing that was really fascinating for me was to be part of a big foreign community when I first got here, because where I worked in Japan, I worked at a school in Kobe, but all the teachers, I think I was one of the few that actually lived in Kobe. They almost all lived in Osaka. And, I'd go home every night. I lived in this like little Japanese neighborhood, and there were very few foreigners around. And I go back home to my wife and my kids, and I basically didn't have any like gaijin friends. I didn't hang out with foreigners. I was part of this little Japanese community, which I liked. I enjoyed it, and all the old timers in the community in the neighborhood all knew me, and the people who worked at the supermarket knew me, and everyone, we were always involved at the the community groups and the recreation center, and always bringing our kids. So like, I was kind of in my own little way part of the community. But when I moved to this school, my school now has like 1,200 kids. We've got like just dozens and dozens of teachers, and we all live in the same apartment building.
Right.
So it's just wild. It's like Team Canada here, man. Like, like all of my neighbors are Canadian or American. Like I'm now in this. Whereas when I was in Japan, I was in this extreme Japan bubble. I lived a very different life.
You're extreme Canada bubble.
Exactly. Yeah. Because I teach at the Canadian International School. So like in Japan, you hear these things about, where people will be talking about like, oh, if you want to learn if you move to Japan, you want to learn how to speak Japanese, you can't hang out with all the foreigners. You can't live in like, can't just hang out in, Roppongi or, just hang out with all the foreigners all the time. My Japan experience was very different than that.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, you're not in the heavily foreigner populated area of Japan, so I imagine it's easier to immerse yourself rather than being somewhere that's like where you see like at least, man, I see so many back in 2019, not 19, that's today. And back in 2009, Jesus, I must be getting tired. Back in 2009, it's like maybe you'd see like one foreigner or one or two or three foreigners a day.
Yeah.
Like now it's just like if you see at least you see like about a handful of them now. Like maybe even more than that. Like it's probably quadrupled since the time I originally got here.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, just like you see so many tourists, you see all these. Most people who work at konbinis now are people from foreign countries.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
So, yeah, I know it's really changed, or at least in Tokyo. I'm not sure how it is in the rest of the parts of Japan, but
probably quite different than that.
Well, yeah, I mean, because maybe you've read about the whole labor shortage.
Yeah, well, yeah, of course. I mean, that was something that was a big issue. While I was there, I mean, it wasn't just looming.
And then it kind of just like this is the straw that broke the camel's back, I guess. This year. Anyway, one thing I want to talk about before we part for today.
Yes, sir.
What is kind of would you say that the Just Japan podcast is quite successful as a podcast?
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about that. The Just Japan podcast was becoming extremely successful. And
really? Okay.
And when I moved to,
so you can outright say that.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I was very excited about the amount of downloads I was getting a month. When I moved to Japan, when I moved to China, the wheels kind of fell off.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think what happened was there was the whole transition period, and I just, you know what it's like. There's a lot of work that goes into producing something like this, and I mean, when I say producing, I mean all that, like lining up guests, arranging stuff with guests,
making time,
scheduling. I think the scheduling thing is the biggest part of everything. Reaching out to people, communicating with them, scheduling things. So I left. I guess basically, I left Japan at the end of July 2017, and the few months leading up to that, it was just havoc, pandemonium, and chaos as we got ready to move.
Okay. Oh, you mean with your family? Because with the podcast, I'm like,
not with the podcast.
How? Okay.
No, it's like with life as we were preparing to move.
Oh, right. Well,
so
the
the podcast wasn't, and not just moving, but like moving to another country, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the podcast wasn't, got kind of put on the back burner. Then, we end up in China, and we get here, and then, we're in a new country, everything's different, new job. I'm wanting to impress and do well, land on my feet running, doing really well. It's really tough on the kids, big transition for the kids. When my kids got here, they didn't speak a lot of English when they first came to, Beijing, and they were at the Canadian International School. So we had a lot of struggles with that, a lot of tears, a lot of frustration on their part because they couldn't communicate well. Right. Now, by the way, both of them are like native English speakers. It's crazy how they flipped. It's nuts. So I basically put out just a few episodes over the course of like that year, and then I just kind of gave up on it.
Oh.
But at its height, and I'll throw out the stat. I mean,
see, everybody listen up. Everybody here, come in.
Here we go. Yeah. I guess at its height, I guess like one of my
this is what you showed up for.
No, but I guess I mean, it's not like it's not like, Rachel and June YouTube fame, but I mean, I was probably getting about close to 50,000 downloads a month.
Oh, okay.
Which is pretty nuts. I mean,
yeah, that's pretty good.
That's pretty good. I
don't get that. Yeah.
I don't get that now either. And I know, like, for example, I've started a new podcast, and it's definitely, like I'm growing that very small now. But, I mean, it was definitely big enough where I could be getting advertisers and,
really?
making some definitely good money. I could have been, but the difference between, say, YouTube and a podcast and getting advertisers on a podcast is that if you want to get advertisers on a podcast, it's kind of old fashioned, Mad Men style. You know, like you actually have to pitch to companies and have them like say, hey guys, you want to advertise with me? And you got to pitch a company, and if they're interested, you've got to write ad copy, go back and forth, and like,
just like Mad Men style. Okay.
Come up with a contract and a fee. So there was a couple of months earlier on in the podcast world where I did have a couple of advertisers, and it was a very interesting, time-consuming exercise to make those deals.
This was 2017.
No, that would have been probably 2016.
Okay.
I can't remember when, but I did have some advertising spots in a few episodes, but they were pretty profitable.
Really?
It was pretty good, but there was a lot of work that went on in the backs,
I'm sure,
behind the scenes to put it together. So, I think so what happened is just a few weeks ago, I decided to bring it back. Like, let's get the Just Japan podcast going again.
Right. I see your tweets every day. So
yeah. Well, it was a weekly podcast, and now this month I've had 3 weeks in a row, and there will be another one next week, and I'm back to doing the weekly thing, and really enjoying it. And it's not a matter of making money or this or that. I'm just having a lot of fun doing it again.
Okay, so you mostly did it for just every week.
Yeah.
In the early days.
Back in the early days, yeah. No, I did it every week. Yeah, I mean, if I didn't stop, we'd be up over 300 episodes now.
Oh, really? Okay.
But right now, it's Monday. We're chatting. Yesterday, I put out episode 196.
Oh, right. I saw that. Yeah, I haven't listened to it yet. I've been mind.
But if I continued again, definitely would be over 300.
Nice. Well, what do you think led to the success of the podcast? Was it just consistency?
I think so. I think again, people come and go. You talked about that earlier on in our interview about like how here you and I are still like even in this here we are in this zone creating content where so many people come and go. I think we're very rare.
It's definitely evolved a lot since 10 years ago. So
it's definitely evolved a lot, but I mean, you don't see a lot of the faces that were here 10 years ago. I mean, of course, you got Hiko Simon, you got Victor.
Well, they still make stuff.
What?
They still make stuff.
No, that's what I mean. Like those people, those are people who still do stuff, right? Like, but I mean, think of like 2008, 2009, 2010. Watch that Christmas in Japan video, the original one that Fat Blue Man put out. How many of those people are still around, right?
Yeah, Fat Blue Man. Yeah, he went back to Canada, right?
Yeah, he's
Canadian, right?
He's Canadian. He lives in Winnipeg. He's doing really well. Like he's got a folk band with his 2 boys, his sons. They do really well. They play at like folk festivals around Canada.
Huh.
Yeah. But I mean, like so many of those people, like whatever happened to them, I wonder. And I think a lot of them probably still live in Japan.
Quite possibly, yeah.
The whole content creation thing. Yeah.
Yeah, because I was talking to a friend of mine, a friend of the show, former guest of the show, Inside Japan podcast, James Vinovich. You've been on the show, right?
He's been on my show. I've been on his. Yeah.
Yeah, I was asking him like, what led to the success of your show? Because I mean, now he's sponsored by jobsinjapan.com, and he has like somebody who talks about getting a job in Japan. And I mean, for somebody who's just coming to Japan, I guess like this podcast would be really valuable.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
I think that's a good, because I always feel like if you're making a show, you always have to have some sort of an edge to get people to come back to your show.
I don't know. I mean, okay, to be honest, I think just like the stick-with-itness of it all is a big thing, right? Like just not giving up, like just always like being very consistent and having that content. James has got that very specific thing about jobs in Japan, right? So people who want to get work, that's his angle. I think mine was more of an umbrella than anything. It was just, I think, bringing in really interesting people who've got really interesting stories. That's the key.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I mean, the episode that gets the most love, and I still get comments to this day, I got one yesterday, was the Tokyo Kuni episode. So I'm so glad I did that one. But
you've got an, oh really? I didn't even know you have an episode of Tokyo. Did you talk to Tokyo Kuni?
Yeah, talk to Tokyo Kuni. It's him.
No shit. When?
Infernet.
When? Okay, hold on. I'm just stopping the process here. Because I've listened to a few of your back episodes, but I didn't see that one. Really?
Yeah, that was episode 20, I think. It was like last year around summer.
I remember when I met him. I didn't live in Tokyo, but I met him in 2010. I was up in Tokyo for the Tokyo Marathon. I was running the marathon that weekend, and I got invited to the Google headquarters. It was before. It was like YouTube was still under Google. So, and I was brought up. I've just been invited to the partnership program.
Right,
so all
right.
the
Back when like, they were giving them out like candy back then.
When you had to be invited to the partnership program,
Yeah,
and we were all invited up to the Google campus or not campus building up in Tokyo, and we had a workshop of like best practices, and yeah, it's the only time I met him, but I met him there, and then we went drinking at the Hub afterwards.
nice.
Yeah, it was pretty cool because he was like iconic to me in a way. Because like when I was living in Korea, and my Japanese wife and I, she was not my wife at the time, but we're pretty serious. I'm like, I think one day I'm going to be moving to Japan, and YouTube was a new beast, and I was on it. I'm like, let's find Japan content. I want to learn about Japan. I think like all people who are interested in Japan want to do. And the only people who were on Japan who I could find was Tokyo Kuni, whose videos were great.
Yeah,
Softy Papa. Softy Papa.
He's still around.
He's still around.
Yeah,
but it was like the complete like anti Tokyo Kuni, because like Tokyo Kuni's like in Tokyo, the flashy cool life, all this wildness, and like Softy Papa would be like in the middle of like an abandoned village in like Shizuoka Prefecture with a wild mountain goat walking past, talking in a soft voice, you know. And then who else? Kansai PJ.
Mm-hmm.
He was making videos.
Wait, does he still make videos? I feel like my sub box hates him or something.
No, he doesn't make videos anymore. Right. He's just a regular on my podcast.
Yeah, he was on the last episode. That was an old episode, though, right?
Well, no. What that was the last episode. He was on this week's episode, which came out yesterday. I actually, because my kids were sick and stuff, I had to cancel some interviews. I couldn't do interviews, right. But I wanted to put out an episode. So I went back onto YouTube and I found we had a collab channel called Two Beers in Asia, and we had it back in 2009. And I pulled 2 videos off of that, and I just ripped the audio. And
I remember that show. Yeah, I remember that.
We had 2 Beers in Asia. So but I'm actually interviewing Kansai PJ tomorrow night for the podcast.
Nice.
He's a very returning guest because he's so freaking interesting. But yeah. So I mean, you know, I suppose I don't know. Having interesting guests who have interesting stories. All right, I think that's the key.
Well, let me ask you this last question for tonight. I guess because I guess it's already midnight here. It's probably time for me to part. Best guests on the Just Japan podcast. Or how about this? I'm not saying you're trying to exclude some interviewees weren't that very good. I'm just saying which are the ones that are the most memorable.
Gosh, who are some of the most memorable? James Reynolds from Earth Uncut TV. He's based in Tokyo. He's a cyclone chaser, essentially. He travels around the world, getting in front of typhoons, and he's a videographer, and he films and like volcanoes and stuff that blows up and stuff that goes boom. He travels around the world getting footage and then selling it to like big news organizations. So Earth Uncut TV, that was really impressive. That when I finished that interview, I was like, wow, that was friggin' cool, man. Let's see what else. Had a Japanese sword expert on one time who was like a world-renowned sword expert. That was kind of cool. Just did a lot. I mean, back in the day, and I'm having a brain fart on his name. I'm sorry if he's listening, but right after the Tohoku thing, the whole earthquake.
That one guy, he's great.
There's this one guy who's great. I want to say his Twitter handle was Ecstatic Jack.
Okay.
Jack lives in Osaka, but he to raise money to help like charity after the Tohoku thing. He longboarded across Japan. So he skateboarded from one end to the other. That was pretty cool. Talking to people like that, you know? Yeah, I've just had so many cool guests. A lot of really neat people. Yeah, so those are a few that pop into my mind right now. You know, people skateboarding across Japan. People, you know, chasing typhoons. Actually, not chasing them, getting in front of them. The opposite of tornado chasing.
I guess you need to go listen to that episode now.
Earth Uncut TV, yeah, pretty neat guy. He's still active in Tokyo. He's all over. Go to on Twitter, Earth Uncut TV.
All right,
he does some really neat stuff. Whenever there's a big earth or any kind of like volcano happening in Japan, he's there, like with drones and stuff. That's pretty neat. Yeah.
So the Andy-san in the chat says, "Is Mully still the most reoccurring guest, or is Kansai PJ edged him out?" I know Mully was on the show like a week ago or so.
Yeah, that was an episode that that was an interview from back in January that I lost and found again. I think, and PJ, if you're listening, I apologize. I've got Eric Surf 6 coming back on again.
Oh, nice.
I'm interviewing him on Thursday.
Yeah, he was on the show too, but I don't know.
Yeah, he was on early back in the day on my show. Like,
oh, really?
Back in the, I think, in the 20s. Yeah, so a long time ago. So it's going to be cool because his channel has evolved quite a bit since we last talked.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's all the questions I have for today.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me on your podcast, sir.
Yeah. Anything you want to say before we go?
I'll pimp out my show to the awesome listeners of your show.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it because I'm trying to grow the show. But
yeah. Well, go check out Just Japan podcast over on iTunes and stuff. I got another one if you're a teacher called Making Better Teachers.
You gotta listen to that. How many episodes are you at right now with that?
18.
18. Okay.
18. Yeah, 18. So episode 197 of the Just Japan podcast will come out next weekend. But I'm definitely when I do that episode, I'll be putting out a big push for your podcast.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
I remember back in the day when James Winovich came on my show with the ALT Insider podcast, and he was his podcast was newisher than mine, and I was able to get him a nice bump. Right. So I'll try to do the same with you. I love
the BUSANKEVIN bump. Need one. Or the Just Japan bump.
It sounds naughty.
All right. Well, I didn't mean it.
I don't know.
It sound naughty,
but it won't be though. But it's midnight where
maybe
you
if
are.
You make that sound effect, like after you say it, then yeah, it does sound naughty.
It's I'm delirious. It's late. It's a Monday night.
Fine.
I've got 25 grade 1 students waiting for me in the morning, so it's no biggie, right?
Okay. Well, we got the Shenzhen Kevin bump.
Maybe we can get that too. Shenzhen Kevin. Yeah. Well, actually, you know what? One of these days, let's get you on my podcast. Okay.
Yeah, sure. Anytime. Yes, message me anytime. If you have like a guest that drops out or something, or you need some. No. I mean, I know how that is. Like sometimes getting guests can be a nightmare.
I think that the Just Japan podcast fans out there know there's a few people. I've got my PJ, I've got Mully, and I've got Andrew Higgins in Japan. These are my go-to guys. They're like when a guest drops on me, like I unfortunately did on you last Friday. Sorry about that. I'd be like literally getting on Twitter or on the Facebook. I'm like, hey guys, you want a podcast? Like, what about? I'm like, I don't know. Let's just make it up.
Yeah, I guess that works.
You guys are good storytellers, so let's just get on.
Yeah, no, I mean that's what you want. That's good. That's podcast gold. So
yeah. All right, well, thank you so much, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So next week on the show there is nobody. It's to be announced. So until check my Instagram or my social media if you want to know who's next on the show. It'll be on there, hopefully. Awesome. Or if you want to know, just bug me. You can message me anytime via social media. And until then, I'm Radrey and
I'm Kevin. See ya.
See you guys.